I think the only memories I have of Edgemont are reconstructed from stories and pictures. I'm not sure that I can recall any genuine memories.
Well, tell us your reconstructions then.
I can, I'll go ahead.
Okay. So again, I don't think I, like vaguely, but maybe is made up that we'd, somebody would move this chunk of bark out of the tree and slide the key in or out. Then when Mom came to visit in Minnesota at the last house we lived in a couple of years ago, then she helped us do that. That way the kids had a spare key that they could get in. So I kind of have a picture in my mind of a big, huge tree amongst other trees, but I don't know if it's really legit. And I don't know, I can picture a pasture, but that may be simply from Dad's videos where it shows him and the horses and stuff like that. So go ahead, Shaun, or somebody that really remembers.
I was gonna say I can't remember a whole ton. I do remember the stagecoach out there, and I remember Joshua Bigham would come play, and I think he would use naughty, nasty words, and I thought he was bad when he'd say some of his words. I can sort of remember being in the stagecoach when he'd say them, like, "Oh, bad boy." And I remember being out in the cherry orchard on a ladder and falling off somehow. I think I was pretty high up. And I remember how super bad headache I had coming back to the house. And I don't know if I was knocked out for a while, if I was able to just go the whole time after falling. But and then let's see.
How come we can't see Shaun right now?
My camera doesn't work.
So let me tell you about the cherry tree. Shaun and I were out in the orchard, and Shaun climbed way high on the ladder trying to pick cherries. And the ladder came over backwards and landed on the ground. And he started screaming on the way down. I ran to the house as hard as I could run to get Mom. And then the next I remember is her helping him back to the house. Or maybe he was on his way when we got there, but I ran for help.
Really? You can remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I have no memory of you or Mom. I just, I can remember my first time ever getting a blessing was I was standing behind Mom in that kitchen, and unaware to her, and just as she turned around with a pan of hot butter to dump on popcorn, and somehow I was right there, and she tripped it on me, and it went down my torso and burned me. And then, so I remember being gathered around with Dad giving me a blessing that night, with my other older siblings and Mom around, and being dressed to my burns.
I didn't remember you got burned. I got burned on my arm 3 different times while we lived in that house. 2nd degree burns, and I still have scars.
So is that why Mom never made popcorn for me? Because all you guys had bad experiences?
Well, I didn't get burned with popcorn. The first time it was the summer after kindergarten, and I wanted ramen, and I didn't know Mom had started the water. So I reached up like this to the stove and grabbed the pan off, because you know, the stove was about to hear on me and I couldn't see it. And it had boiling water in it, and I splashed boiling water clear up my arm
Yikes.
and blistered and pussed and hurt, and they wouldn't let me go to swimming lessons at BYU, but they took me down below and I got to look through the windows in the swimming pools and watch people underwater. So that was cool. And then there was another time mom had made a whole pot of hot lima beans and I was dishing them up and it spilled and blistered. And then there was another time when I was helping mom make fry bread and I was scared of the hot oil getting too close to it and didn't think it through. So instead of getting close and put it in, I tossed it in. It splashed hot oil all over me and blistered every time. And I don't remember which time. It wasn't wasn't the first time, but it was summer again and I sat in the room with the black and gray carpet and watched TV and kept my arm in a bucket of ice water while everybody else got to go outside and play. And I was sad I was having to do screen time instead of outside play time, John Calabro. Outside play was way better than TV.
So is that why mom never made me fry bread? Because all you got burned?
I
Tim,
don't,
you never
Yeah.
got anything.
Mom made fry bread all the time, Tim.
How old were you, Shaun, Joseph, and Ruth when we moved to Shelley?
I had just barely gone to kindergarten orientation with the little tiny toilets they had. I thought that was going to be the most rockin' awesome thing to have a little tiny toilet to go on. Then we moved, so I never got to use a little toilet.
So how old were you, Joe?
3.
Wow, that's amazing. You can remember Fat on falling off a ladder.
I know.
Yeah.
I have they're not very, I have 3 distinct memories of Grandma and Grandpa now. Between the 2 of them. And Grandpa died on my 3rd birthday and Grandma died 3 days later. So I guess it is pretty amazing that Joseph remembers that, but
Well, are you going to tell us your memories or we got to go through some other video?
so the memory I have of Grandpa is him coming out of the back door. So in the house in Edgemont, there was the big front room with the rose wallpaper. And to one side, if you went one way, it was the kitchen and the bathroom and mom and dad's room. And if you went back a different way, there was a door. And in that door, there was the laundry room and 2 bedrooms. And I remember Grandpa coming out of that door. And he was big and tall and wearing striped bib overalls. And for Grandma, I remember sitting at the table in their house in Idaho Falls, and it had chrome legs and a Formica top. And I remember sitting there and eating raspberries, her bottled raspberries in a jar. And she'd dish me some and I'd eat them and say more. And she'd dish me some and I'd eat them and say more, please. And I think I ate almost the whole jar. And then the other one is so weird. It's so weird. I was playing outside at their house and their little neighbor kid was over there playing with me, and he was a chubby kid. And I don't know his real name, but I called him World because he was round like the world.
Nice.
Well, I don't think I called it to him out loud, but even if I did, I was 2. And then one time he told me, we were playing and he told me he was going to go to the bathroom and he'd come back. And he was gone a long time. And I couldn't figure out what took him so long to go to the bathroom. And so I started imagining stuff about, like, in his house to get to the bathroom, you jumped in a hole and then you floated past. I don't know if I'd ever seen Alice in Wonderland, but it's like I was picturing, like, when she jumps in the hole and she's falling down past everything, and he was floating down past all these rooms in his house and all these other people to get to the bathroom. I had this big complicated thing in my imagination about why it took him so long to go to the bathroom. So
I just assumed they're not going number one.
well, maybe at 2 years old, I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway. Oh, and then
So-
I remember being lifted up to somebody lifting, probably Dad, I don't remember who, lifting me up, and they're side by side caskets at the viewing. I went to the viewing, but now I don't remember this, but Mom told me that I went to the viewing and not the funeral, but I do remember somebody lifting me and seeing them lying side by side in the viewing.
That just reminds me of Jitsu getting potty trained at Edgemont. Some little
Yep.
tiny plastic toilet, and anytime Jitsu produced something, we all got candy. So I was always trying to get Jitsu in there, sitting down, putting out something. Time for another treat, Jitsu.
What kind of
I
candy?
told that story less than a week ago to a lady in our ward who can't get her daughter potty trained. I said, just give everybody in the family a treat, because my brother made me sit and sit. I wasn't off that potty for 4 seconds. I was back in there trying to get Shaun some more candy.
Yeah,
Well,
what kind of candy?
Tootsie Rolls, I'm sure.
I don't remember.
Why did I think it was peanut M&Ms or something?
I don't think it had wrappers
It was-
on it.
Laddie, you weren't there when I was getting potty trained.
Oh, I heard the story from Mom is what I thought.
They hadn't even invented candy with wrappers at that point.
That's not true.
We'll see.
Willis
That's what trees
Justin
say.
and I used to go buy penny candy called Zots when we lived in Edgemont. You remember those, Justin?
Yep.
They're in wrappers and they came in a big strip, but you could tear them off individually, and they make them again, but they're about this big and they're a hard candy, and they have a filling in the middle that kind of foams when you get to it. But there was a little store up near where Days Market is now that we could go buy penny candy for actual pennies.
Cool Smells, what kind of treats did you give your kids when Joseph was good at the potty?
I don't really remember. It could have been Tootsie Rolls. I don't know.
Joseph, what specific memories do you have?
Okay, here they go. First of all, Dad shot a bear and had a bearskin rug, which is in Kathy's possession. The older siblings had a game they played. I don't know where Shaun was mentally, but you, Lisa, and Willis, one of you would put that bearskin rug on and start crawling through the house and growling at us.
Ooh, that was exciting.
And Shaun and I go tearing through the house, and you came up with a story that the bear slept on the back side of the bed. So there was a room that had bunk beds in it, and then a bed on the other side of the room. And that bearskin rug would get rolled up and tucked away on the other side of that bed. But the story was that the bear slept over there, and whatever you do, don't wake it up. And there'd be times that I'd be running for my dear life, screaming, and that bear'd be after me. And then whoever it was would pull it off. It's just us. It's just us. See, and I could not sort it out. I could not figure out how the bear could eat one of you and then you could reappear. But one day I was in that back bedroom and we were all in there, a bunch of us, and I was on the top bunk, and pretty soon everybody left and closed the door, and I was on the top of that bed. And I thought, if I climb down from here, that bear is gonna jump over that bed and eat me. And if I scream for help, that bear's gonna wake up and eat me. And I waited and waited and waited and waited. And finally, I could hear people calling for me, calling my name, but I did not dare answer. And finally, Willis came in the door, and I was pretty worked up, but he got me down. There was a ladder right in the middle of the house. It went right up. A ladder went right through the hall somewhere into the top of the house, and there was a room up there, and I could climb the ladder, but I wasn't big enough that I couldn't step over to get in the room, so I never got to play in the room up there, but I could climb the ladder a ways. One time I got a hold of Dad's straight razor and decided to shave myself. And I cut myself pretty good and had blood coming everywhere. And I came wandering down the hall, and that's probably the first time I got scotch tape and toilet paper to bandage it up. There wasn't enough room around the kitchen table for me to eat. So I was in a high chair, and I would be put in the high chair and set up to the pull out breadboard. So the breadboard would pull out, and I'd sit up to the high chair, and that is where I got to eat my dinner. We had Dad's red Chevy truck, and we had that white bus. And then down about where Canyon Road meets University Avenue, there's kind of a storage fence there today. There was a man that had tons of old cars and trucks and equipment. He had motor graders and tractors and everything. And Dad went there and bought what Dad called us a Jimmy, but it was a 1964 or 5 Suburban. And he brought it home, and we rode in it a couple of times, and then he wouldn't drive it anymore. I don't know why, but eventually sold it. We had Keith and Irma had a white Dodge van that Keith used for upholstery, and we bought one. I don't know why we had one, but there was no seats in the back. There was a spare tire, and we could sit around on the spare tire, but if we went over a very big bump, the tire would jump, and so would we. And if I remember right, one time we were driving around a corner, and Willis went out the front door of that van, I think. Then there was Lover's Lane, and I can remember the puddles in Lover's Lane. There were the puddles when it was dry. There was one that was long and oval, and some shorter ones that weren't quite as long. And when it was wet, we'd beg Mom, and she'd get moving through those puddles and splash way up the sides of the bus. That was fun. Sometime Mom got a brand new radio, and it was a Sanyo, and it had a weird emblem, but it had hard push buttons to make the tape deck work and the radio. That was the first time I had seen a cassette player. We used that for several years till one of us broke the door off the radio, off the tape part. That still worked. And then Dad listened to Paul James on that radio for years and years and years. That radio was in the 640 South house. I do remember that we had a corral with animals in it, and I was not supposed to ever go into the corral. Shaun and I would go to the Chapman's house, But while we were walking to the Chapman's house, there was always water. It seems like we had to walk on some boards or we'd get soaked. And there were snakes in the water. And we were supposed to be careful about the snakes. And then Chapman's house, you go over to their place and you climb and climb and climb stairs, these big rooms, and finally get way to the top. And their kitchen and living room was up in the top. And they had this wooden furniture. They had tables and matching chairs that somebody had made huge chisels out of it. The whole table just had bumps. The whole thing was chiseled out bumps. I don't know why that was the case.
I think that they had that shipped from New Zealand. He used to teach seminary in New Zealand.
Yeah, that was
Oh.
the style. That was on purpose that it had that gougy look.
Yeah, I knew.
loved that. I would just go along the bench and rub my fingers through all those little divots. Oh, I loved feeling my fingers through that bench.
Yeah, and then they had lofts in the top of that place.
Well, how did you ever get in there, go walking the plank over a 20-foot drop into who knows what?
We always did it lots of times. They had a newer Suburban than we did. The one Dad bought was 60s something. They had a yellow one that had 2 front doors and 1 side door, and their family rode in that. The next to them had Faulkner's had their stuff, and they had a red tractor, and I climbed on that red tractor and started pulling buttons and cables and rods, and I pulled a rod that engaged the starter, and that thing started to whir, and boy, I climbed right off of that and headed for home. My first Christmas, I remember there at Edgemont, we got some little people sets. We got a barn with a silo, a little cow, a little horse, a little chicken, a little fence. And if you shut and open the barn door, you could hear a cow moo. So I remember that. And
You remember making that cow moo about 1,000 times a day? You just sit there.
no, but
Opening and closing it.
sounds like. I also, Mom had a friend named Adele. Adele had a blue bug. And anytime Adele came to visit, she would let me play in that bug. Now, the bummer for me is the bug had a locking steering wheel. So I'd climb in it and jerk the wheel and it would lock. And so the rest of the time I played in it, the wheel was locked. But she was pretty favorable to me and never complained about me in her car. The other ladies didn't want me in their cars, but she let me in hers. I remember there were 2 either donkeys or mules called Pokey and Jenny.
One was a horse and one was a donkey.
Oh, was it?
Palomino, Mom? Yeah, so Pokey was a Palomino and Jenny was a donkey.
And then the other thing that I remember is that we had a neighbor, we called him Mariotti, and he had a cane, and he would come over sometimes, and I loved that cane. And as soon as he was sat down, I would swipe that cane and run off with it. And I do remember being under the table clutched to that cane when they came looking for me. And finally they found me and wrestled the cane from me, and I got scolded for taking it. But boy, I sure wanted that cane. It was at that house that I fell in love with keys. I started to collect keys. People started to give me keys. I started to haul keys around and haul keys off. And that house had some skeleton doors in the house. We used skeleton keys.
They did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So that's probably about my memory of it. Oh, I do remember going into the there's a couple other things. I remember going into the Edgemont Elementary School for some reason, and in the hallway was an old simulator that had been donated to the school, and you could play on it. Had a steering wheel in the kindergarten wing of the school. And I do remember going to Dad's school and playing on those simulators.
You remember driving trikes into jugs of water?
No, I've seen the footage, but I don't remember that.
Hmm.
Why
Remember
little?
on swings?
What, Ruth?
Sorry, Shaun. Why did you like Mariotti's cane? You remember?
I don't know, but I sure liked it.
Go ahead, Shaun.
I was gonna say I don't remember any Christmas, but then I do remember being up at with Chapman's and my older siblings, I guess, and I started bawling, wanting to go home, and Dennis Chapman drove me home. I guess
Tell-
probably
tell-
Christmas morning.
Tell us, drove you home from where? Tell us.
The canyon by Sundance.
Aspen Grove.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a winter that Dennis was caretaking Aspen Grove in the winter, and so that's why we were up at Aspen Grove instead of just through the field with Chapman's, and we stayed.
So Lisa, when Dennis brought Shaun home, did you stay there?
I think so, and then he brought us Shaun wouldn't stay overnight, and I know we stayed at least one night.
And that was a hard. Dennis almost didn't make it. The snow and the drifts were so bad.
When he brought the 3 bigger kids home, but I know that we stayed at least one night because after lights out, Caroline and I were kind of being sneaky and staying up and trying to read. And Nancy and Dennis caught us, and since we were reading, they didn't care and they let us keep the light on and keep reading.
So with how good Jitsu's memories are, do you remember me playing with Richard Jitsu, and then Allison would want to play, and he'd always try to ditch her, and I felt super conflicted because I thought, oh, like, why does Allison have to be ditched? So he'd try to get me to ditch with him to bail and run away from her, and she'd be screaming and bawling because she wanted to be with us. But somehow I'd end up with offers of candy canes by Lance Faulkner and Usty and Wilgie and who knows who else if I'd kiss Allison in the apple tree.
I would not have remembered the Richard part if you hadn't have brought it up, but I do kind of remember him and you having to ditch her. And I remember standing in the yard with her. My problem was I wanted to kiss her, but you got to.
And I never got a freaking candy cane for it.
I'll send you one.
Do you guys remember the long hallways at Utah Technical College?
Oh
I do.
yeah, they love it.
We got a Evel Knievel stunt cycle Christmas present once. I remember taking it to those hallways and having it be holidays or Saturdays and nobody was there. Being able to race that motorcycle down, probably 100-yard hallways.
Well,
Yeah.
Shaun got a toy truck that you push it and then it goes on its own. And he wouldn't leave it alone. He just pushed it and you go. We could not get him to leave it alone and let it run on its own. And we took it to the school so that it could have run a long ways. He wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had those hallways polished to a really high gloss too.
Yeah. I remember going to driver's ed class and watching Donnie and Marie get private driving lessons from Dad and wanting to see if Donnie actually wore purple socks. And he was wearing purple socks the night we were there.
They weren't glittery, but like he had on TV, but they were really purple.
Where on earth would you buy purple socks in 1970
Well, if you were,
something?
JC Penney.
it was a thing with Donny Osmond. It was a thing, and on his TV show, he was always talking about wearing purple socks. So probably 5 million teenage girls and their mothers were sending in purple socks.
Hmm.
I didn't hear Donnie Marie or Aspen Grove till I was in college.
Oh, Tim.
I remember, I don't know where I slept when we were there. I think out on the black couch or something in the living room. But I remember over and over and over again being cold in the night and going in and climbing up. I remember the metal footboard of Mom and Dad's bed, and I remember climbing up and over that and up in their bed between them. And I was always hauled back out. Always so bummed I couldn't sleep in the bed with my mom and dad. Probably because
Yeah.
Jitsu and Buffy were already there. I couldn't
Yeah,
have 3
and-
kids.
You had abandonment issues, huh, Fat On?
Well, there was a crib in that room too, right? Mom and Dad's room.
Oh man, I don't know.
Yeah, and after Jess fell out of the camper, Dad built a cover over that crib, like a big plywood cover with a lid, and so you could put him in and shut the lid so nobody could get in and jostle his fractured skull.
Dang.
Does anybody remember the doll Dad bought for me? It was
Well, before we get to the doll, let's stick with Jess for a second.
okay.
When Jess fell out of that camper, I was in the camper with him. And I don't know where you guys were, but we had to stay there. And
Oh.
I heard him hit the floor and start screaming. And I tried to get help. And if you can remember the camper lock, it had kind of the camper handle was a little bit oval and it was hooked on the end, but it slid a little pin into the lock. So you had to slide this pin out. And I could not get that lock off. And he screamed and screamed, and I could not go for help. And finally, Willis opened the door and found us both. But I was there when he fell, and I heard him hit.
Where was the camper? Was it in Provo or in Idaho when it happened?
We were visiting Dan and Linda, probably in Idaho Falls.
Okay.
And I remember opening the door and seeing Jess on the floor, quiet and running for help and coming back and him screaming. So I don't know how that doesn't line up with Joseph, but that's how I remember it.
What's Willis's version?
I don't know. He's in Moab or wherever.
All right, Lisa, let's talk about your doll. We got 7 minutes left.
Okay, so does anybody else remember this? I'd seen this doll and it was,
If you threw it through a window, I remember it.
yeah, this is a different doll. I remember that one too.
Good.
Oh, I was so mad at you for ducking and then the window broke and I got in trouble for breaking the window. But what I remember, the doll I'm talking about it was about the size of a 3-year-old. And it was this doll and it had beautiful brown curly hair and a wedding dress.
It was the size of a 3-year-old?
Yeah, it was this big doll.
Oh my word. So did
and I-
Jitsu kiss on that?
I really wanted it. And Dad and Mom said no, and then it was at DI, and then Dad got it and brought it home as a surprise to me. Now its beautiful brown curly hair was a wig, so there's pictures of some of my younger brothers wearing that wig when they were dressed up as girls. But that doll freaked out people more than once. They'd walk into the room and it'd be sitting there and they'd, oh, what's that person doing there in the middle of the night or something?
You need something to eat?
Does anybody remember Lily having posters of teen idols on her room? On
Oh,
the
we
wall
won't
of her room
even
that
talk about that.
wanted to kiss every night, like Shaun Cassidy and Leif Garrett.
No. It was
Oh, I don't remember any of that.
Cassidy. It was only Shaun Cassidy. I thought Leif Garrett was not cute.
Okay, Shaun Cassidy poster. I think I have a memory that me and Willis poking our eyes through your door to see if we could see you kiss your poster at night.
I know. Not my finest moment.
In the black couch in the living room or the front room. This is my only sticky story that I think I ever have. I remember climbing behind there and peeling a red delicious apple with my teeth and spitting the thick, yucky peelings on the floor. And then I had all that nice, fresh, white apple flesh to eat without the nasty peeling.
Do any of you younger ones remember walking around the floor with your full pajama suits on and getting electricity and your hair sticking up and then touching people and shocking them?
Vaguely. Yeah.
I can remember
vaguely
about half of
recall that.
you guys never had your feet in your things. You wore them out, probably doing exactly that.
Yeah, the pajamas. When we got those pajamas hand me down, the feet were gone. The only time we had feet in them is if we got them new. But if we got them hand me downs, the feet were already gone.
Or if you grew and Mom cut off the bottom of the feet so you could wear them a little bit longer.
Joseph,
Well, that
John,
maybe.
do you remember Dad's calculator?
No, I don't think. Was it big, like an adding machine?
Kind of, and it had digital letters, and we thought it was a video game or something. It was a calculator.
But you had to take it out of like 3 boxes to ever use it. It was like a gold nugget or something. It was so well protected.
Well, it was right on the brand new invention of them, and Dad's
Wanna come see
mission
my
president
family?
Heaton had introduced it to Dad. It was cutting edge, and I used my reweaving money and bought one for Dad. It was a big deal. It was a big new technology. We just couldn't believe it.
Well, it was in a cardboard box, and then in that, it was like those Russian nesting dolls. And then there was a big styrofoam package, and then there was the calculator nested in that, wrapped in plastic. And if you ever wanted to use it, you had to get special permission and take all those layers off and plug it in. And yeah.
And you didn't
Lisa,
use it?
do you need to start your next meeting?
Oh, I don't know.
There was Dad had his art room that he built a little railing thing around all the work in the room where we did TV, including Sunday Night, Kickapoo Joy Juice and Disney. And I remember I don't know.
Spit it out.
Well, I was gonna say I remember Julie Fisher climbing the ladder up to the loft and then falling down off. It seemed like every time she'd go do that thing, she'd fall off. And I remember how she'd cry when she hit her bottom on the ground. Like, ah,
She wouldn't have been falling very far. We wouldn't have been able to keep the loft if if she'd fallen from the top of it, she would have been seriously injured.
So let me tell you about that loft. It was just, the ceilings were, I think 11 feet tall in that house. And then somebody had built in the bathroom and put a 7-foot ceiling. So there was 4 feet up there. That was just, those boards, I can't think what you call them, that you put the ceiling on. And it was just an empty space up there. So Bernie went away, probably to Canada. And I got Marilyn Harris's girl, Roxanne, was her name then.
The
then
boards are called studs, I think.
or rafters or something. Anyway, somehow I got boards down. I got her to come and paint in there, and I got carpet samples to lay down, and then I nailed the ladder up because I thought that'd be such an awesome place for kids. And when Bernie came home, he was annoyed, and he thought it was unsafe, and he said he was going to take the ladder down. And I said, well, I don't think you should take the ladder down. I think the kids should play up there. And he said, well, I don't think it's safe. And I said, well, don't take the ladder down until we ask the bishop. We didn't ever ask the bishop, and he didn't ever take the ladder down.
Was it unsafe?
What?
Was it unsafe?
Well, I
If you-
guess Julie Fisher kept falling off, but I don't think you kids did.
the rest, but I had so much fun up there. And then their mom had somehow wired just a little light up there too. And
yeah.
the cord went down the ladder, and you plugged the cord in, and then you could pull the light switch, and we had colored light bulbs up there too. It was the coolest place to play as a
Well,
kid.
I loved that because you kids would play up there, and then I knew where you were, and I could hear you.
We
And I
could
did-
climb. We could climb up there right after Jitsu did his little potty training exercise and eat our candy.
All right. Thanks, guys. We're out of time, right?
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
Tim.
Tim.